Hello and welcome back to my four-way comparison of the brand new 20 Plus series Diskstaiton NASs from Synology. I'm recording this in summer 2020 when all four of these NASs have been released back to back. Now they've been released in different time zones and different release schedules depending on your region, but largely these are now available everywhere in the world in one shape or form. And because they've been released within about a month of each other, let's be honest, it's quite confusing. Synology have done this over the last few years, releasing batches of their Plus series devices all at once. And when it comes down to it, a number of times you end up creating your own funnel when buying these devices. So you look on the website and you go, oh, a new Synology. Oh, there's another new. Oh my God, there's another new Synology. And then suddenly you realise the pricing of them is very, very similar. Now, let's be honest, that's almost certainly not accidental that they're going to release all of this hardware at the same time, with little gradients between them in terms of pricing and hardware inside. Obviously that's by design, but that doesn't help you because you want to know which one best suits your needs. Now, the ones we're looking at today are, and I'm doing this in order of kind of like pricing, if I'm honest, but then these will move around almost certainly in terms of the hierarchy throughout this video. There is the DS220 Plus from Synology. This arrives at about 250, 260 quid if you shop around, and that 220 Plus has got a dual core pretty CPU inside, the J4025, and that is a 2.0 gigahertz processor, dual core that can be burst up to 2.9 gigahertz, and it also arrives with 2 gig of DDR4 memory that can be upgraded up to 6 gig. We'll talk about that later on. Next, this one is the DS720 Plus. This arrives for, again, about 350, 360 if you shop around, so 100 quid price jump immediately. And between these two, this device arrives with a quad-core CPU, the J4125. It's a 2.0 to 2.7 gigahertz processor it also arrives with 2 gig of DDR4 memory that can be upgraded to 6 gig as well. They've both got soldered memory. In fact, all of them have soldered memory, and they all have one memory slot that allows, in this case, to upgrade these two to 6 gigabytes of memory, and again that's DDR4 2666 megahertz memory. And this device here also arrives with NVMe upgradability on the base, so you can add SSDs inside, and that allows you to improve the internal performance of the hard drives inside here with SSD caching of those super fast NVMe's not included, and you can upgrade the device in its lifespan. Now, if we move along, actually before we do that, it's also worth mentioning this can be expanded by another 5 bays using the DX517. Next, the DS420 Plus. Now this one arrives at about 400 to about 410, so about a £50 price increase over that last one. However, that price difference does not immediately translate into power, because this arrives with near identical hardware to that of the 220. This arrives with that dual-core CPU, the J4025, again 2.0 to 2.9 gigahertz. It also arrives with 2 gig of DDR4 memory that can be upgraded again to 6 gig of memory. But this device is a 4-bay and therefore opens the door to better RAID choices. You can get a better capacity versus cost analysis there with regards to these guys having either one big old pile of storage or mirrored drives in a RAID 1 or SHR that allow you to have a safety net of one drive, but you lose one whole drive of capacity. This device here opens the door to RAID 5 and RAID 6 or 1 and 2 disk redundancies, as well as that SHR, again, Synology's own hybrid RAID system where you can mix and match drives. But ultimately, a 4-bay brings the ability to have a better scaling of price versus capacity in terms of your redundancy. As well as that, this device also arrives with those 2 NVMe slots at the base for that SSD caching, something that's available on the more powerful NAS, but not the lower grade NAS. So it's got some of that hardware and some of that hardware, but in this 4-bay device. But it can't be expanded. These are your 4 bays only. When you get this device, you can't upgrade later on. And finally, the one on the end, the DS920 Plus, arguably the most powerful device of the 4, arriving with all of the features of the others. It's got that quad-core CPU, the J4125, and again, 2.0 to 2.7 gigahertz. It arrives with 4 gig of DDR4 memory that can be upgraded to 8 gig, so more by default and a higher maximum available to you. and it arrives with those NVMe bays in the base. And of course, it can be expanded with the 5-bay expansion, just like the 720. But this device arrives, again, probably the most expensive, around about $450, $460, which, once you include VAT in any of these purchases, or whatever you call the tax in your local countries, that will increase the price probably, depending on your region, somewhere between 12 and 25%, because of the tax system being different in every country in the world. So, those are pretty much your devices. Now, they do have certain things in common, of course. They've all got 1 GBE, for example. Not only 1 GBE, they've all got 2 1 GBE ports with link aggregation supported. That means with whichever one of these devices you go for, you can get between 100 and 200 or so megabytes per second with a supported switch and with link aggregation or port trunking enabled. On top of that, they all arrive with USB 3 attached to them, which means with USB 3 you can attach certain dongles for wireless connectivity, although the support of that is waning somewhat. You can attach USB printers, you can attach UPSs, you can attach different supported peripheral devices, or attach that USB to a virtual machine to be used for a virtual copy of Windows or a virtual copy of Ubuntu or something. So there is support of those USBs. Along with that, all of these devices support pretty much the entire catalogue of Synology's DSM 6.2 with DSM 7 coming at the end of the year application. So that's the entire collaboration suite of Synology Chat, Synology Office, Synology Mail, Synology Calendar, Active Backup Suite, virtualization, the virtual machine tool, Synology Virtual Machine Manager, Hyper Backup, basically the entire spectrum of Synology's software catalogue works on these devices. However, the difference is about breadth and depth, not height. With these devices, they can all run the same software, but it's the extent to which you can use them and the multiple environments at any single time and multiple users at any one time that makes all the difference. So this is where we're going to break things down into home user, prosumer, small business, medium business across these. Now, this device here, the 220 Plus, if you are someone that's just looking for standard photo backups, if you're someone that's running like an Xbox or a PlayStation and you want to stream your media to your Amazon Fire Stick or directly onto the console user interface, if you are looking for a device just to stream music around your home or when you're away, or you want to use a Plex media server with no transcoding, then the 220 will do the job. It arrives with the support of all that multimedia, and it can support up to about 5 users, graphically very, very well. It is not designed really for high-end 4K playback or transcoding. I mean, the chip supports it, but not to the highest degree. And also, if you are looking at virtualization, or if you're looking at containers, or if you're looking at sandbox virtual kind of image environments, this is just not going to have the horsepower to do that and run it itself. Case in point, if you run the VM software on this device, chances are that the dual core, you're going to have to dedicate at least one whole core to that VM and 1 of the 2 gig of memory. Consequently, that's not going to be the most powerful VM to start with, and you're only going to allow 1 gig of memory and 1 core of that CPU to run the Synology array underneath. What I'm saying is, it can run all this software, but not dramatically well, and chances are the end user is going to feel the pinch on day one. Also, I've touched on this in other videos. This device arrives with 2 years of manufacturer's warranty, all the others with 3. So again, if you're someone that really cares about warranty, cares about the manufacturer holding your hand on a hardware level, that could make all the difference to you as well. Don't get me wrong, all the software comes with a lifetime warranty within the lifespan of your product. But hardware warranty is a very different thing, and these devices are designed to be on 7 days a week, every month, years on end. So that can make all the difference. What I'm saying is, if you are a small group user and not a business user, this might get you by. But just remember that if you do start to think about running IP cameras in your home or business environment while running multiple backups, while running multimedia, and having a structured multi-tiered backup strategy, you're going to eat up a lot of this system's hardware resources running that task for even 1 or 2 users. So just be very aware of the number of users that are going to be accessing this device. And by users, I don't just mean humans, I mean apps as well at any given time, because this device has a lower glass ceiling than any other NAS on this table. It's a great value product and gives you a great single or two user DSM experience. But the DS220 Plus, again, think about that glass ceiling. Now, when we move along to the table, we can talk about these two, because this is probably, for me personally anyway, I know it probably isn't for you, these two are the largest areas of contention for most users, because the price point between these is so incredibly close. I know a number of you that are looking at multimedia are probably looking at these two, but we'll get to that in a bit. With the 420 and the 720 arriving at a price point, in some cases as little as £40, depending on if you shop around, you kind of look at your priorities, because both of these are kind of prosumer and small business for different reasons. Remember, both of them have got their NVMe SSD cache. Both of them have got that Intel CPU with a great floating point and transcoding there going on, as well as both of them having the likes of BTRFS and both of them having support of Synology Hybrid RAID. However, this device is geared more towards capacity on day one. I know it seems an obvious thing, but it's more than just knowing there's two extra bays. This device has geared its cost, its price tag, towards giving greater capacity. And if what you care about is a larger amount of storage space rather than overall power, and you don't intend to push that software to its limits, or at least to multiple user case scenarios, this is a great device to go for. Remember, modern hard drives at 16 TB mean that this can provide you with 64 terabytes of storage right now on day one. Now, this device, remember that's raw without your RAID, will present you 32 terabytes. So you're thinking, yum yum, that sounds great, that's still 32 terabytes. However, you've got to remember that once you install a RAID array with OneDrive of drive protection and failure, that's where things are going to change dramatically, because this will still give you up to 48 terabytes of storage, which is great to hear, but this device will only give you 16, which might sound great on day one, but depending on you, the user, and how much data you generate over time, this might be a far better choice for you long term. Now, the 720 gears its budget towards hardware other than storage. It's power. It's got that 2 gig of memory, but it's got that quad-core CPU. And remember, it's got expandability down the line. You can add 5 more drives later. So it asks you to leverage your cost. And if you are someone that's going to go with just 2 drives on day one, this is probably not the device for you, because this device gives you more in terms of output. And that's why this is more prosumer than it is business, because businesses care, I would say, more about capacity than overall power, because they'll run the same handful of programs. They won't want to really diversify too much. And a business user is probably going to be more angled towards the 420 than they will towards the 720 moving forward. The 720 brings a lot of power for things like Plex Media Server, the ability to run multiple VMs, and the ability ultimately to push it much, much further than the 420. This is about reliability. This is about performance. This is about dependability. This is about being able to do as much as possible in that time frame. And in terms of cost and value, I'd probably say this gives you more for your money, not only because it's a lower price point overall, but because this can be expanded later. This doesn't allow you to expand later on. And so it's a tortoise and hare situation with this device giving you a lot of storage on day one, but only that dual-core CPU and arriving with 2 gig of memory at the beginning. Something that I already highlighted is a bit of a glass ceiling for that device over there. But this leads us to our last user case scenario, and that is these two. The 920 versus the 420. These two, on the face of it, both 4 bays, both arriving with dual LAN on the rear, both arriving with NVMe SSD cache, both with 3 years of warranty. Well, how do you choose between them? Well, it's nice and simple. This one is future-proof compared to this one. And although it doesn't have 2.5 GPU, and although it doesn't have a lot of the upgrades at the bigger beastier, like PCIe and stuff like that, in terms of you know, what you're getting for your money, this is the perfect user case scenario. It gives you that 4 bays of storage. It gives you the expandability. It gives you that CPU. It even gives you 4 gig of memory on day one that can be upgraded to 8. And when you look at the price difference between these devices and realize that at one end of the table to the other, there's only about 200 nicker between them, there's obviously that structure once again where you're being kind of put into a funnel when you're choosing these. And that 200 nicker, you can slice some of that storage off the top and gear towards this end of the table, because I do think you will see that value for money. And remember, this will perform better in surveillance with more cameras simultaneously. It will perform more 4K transcodes. It will perform better in things like containers. And if you are going to be taking advantage of the collaboration suite of, remember, Synology Chat for all your users, internal and external, to communicate via a multifaceted means of network or internet. If you are going to utilize this device to transcode multimedia for you and your family on the smart TV in your front room or via the console in your bedroom with 2 or 3 streams at once, this is the one for you. And remember that memory upgrade, because one thing that knocked me off about the majority of these units when they arrived was that soldered memory, and the fact that these 3 have a 6 gig memory limit. Something that I still don't quite understand and still annoys me, to be frank. Because that CPU, both the dual and the quad core, support up to 8. And it's available on this. So 3 years of warranty, NVMe SSD caching, and a CPU that can take advantage of it. And particularly if you're looking for a NAS that is going to support you in DSM7 in the future at the end of 2020, go towards this end of the table, and more appropriately, you probably want to look at this one. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I've tried to keep this as basic as possible, because I'm not going to touch on things like power consumption, but if you need to know it, they use more power as you go to this end of the table. They've got bigger PSUs as you go to that end of the table. And ultimately, if that is your concern, noise, go to that end of the table. Just remember that with each tier, they go up higher. Ultimately, for me, the 920 is the best of the 4 if you can budget it. But if you can't budget it, if I had to pick between these 4, I'm going to opt for this one. This one gives you the best value of cost versus return between the 4 of these. I'm not going to say it's the best one, but it's the best for your money. That's the best in terms of power, and that's the best for the home user. And this is for people, I would say, as an entry point for business into NAS. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Click like if you have. Click subscribe to learn more, and visit the links in the description to each of my hardware reviews of these devices, both in written form at nascompares.com and of course here on YouTube. I will see you next time.